Carlos Ramirez, owner of NVS Audio in Roselle, New Jersey. Hamilton took the trip, rode his bike all the way from Canada to get the audio repaired on his CVO. So he had a shop do a build. They had the bike for months and months and months and stuff. Some of the stuff that they did on the build he did not agree with, but he went with it. He got the bike back and hated the way the bike sounded. He invested a ton of money into the bike and was super disappointed when he got the bike back. On top of that, they removed his power locks, which is one of the reasons that people buy a CVO. It's one of the best features. Without his permission, they completely removed it and installed a set of speakers there that he did not need. The bike had too many speakers on it. Bike didn't have enough bass. Then the craziest thing to me was they sealed and ported his bags, which we do all the time, but they did 8-inch drivers. It doesn't make sense to use 8-inch mid-bass drivers if you're going to seal the bag, considering the customer is going to lose all his bag space, so you might as well go with 10s. The bike was a complete Cicada build. Instead of using Cicada 8s, they should have used Cicada 10s, since he was losing all 100% of his bag space anyway. That didn't make sense. So then we went over it, and then on top of that, we never, ever, ever use metal mesh in front of our woofer grills, and there's a reason for it. We like to use a polyester mesh. That way it's water resistant. It keeps dirt from touching the cone. But more importantly, we don't like the chance of the woofer coming in contact with the metal mesh. And that's exactly what happened at this point. And it actually shredded the cones of the 8-inch mid-bass drivers. So on top of the bike not creating the right amount of bass, they destroyed $1,000 worth of woofers. As we got into the build, it just got crazier and crazier. So they used 3 of the Cicada 2,000 watt amps, 1 in the fairing, 2 in the tour pack. So as we pulled it apart, the install was super, super, super neat, but they used 1 8-gauge power wire to run 2 2,000 watt amps. So 4,000 watts RMS off 1 single 8-gauge. Crazy. 6,000 watts RMS on the bike, and they kept the stock battery, did not upgrade to a lithium. 6,000 watts actually pushes the limit of any lithium. Technically, you would need 2. They didn't even use 1. Crazy. So we had to rewire the bike, had to use 0 gauge. We kept all the equipment. Then when we went over the wiring, it was 12 speakers on the bike, 12 channels worth of amplifications. None of the amplifiers were bridged. They were running the same amount of power to the tweeters in the front that they were to the 8-inch mid-bass drivers in the bags. Insane. So we took everything apart, rewired everything, upgraded all the wiring. So now we have one of the BD2000s bridged to run the 10-inch mid-bass drivers in sealed and ported bags. Then we use the second one bridged to the fairing speakers, set of CMs. And then we ran the other one in stereo to run the lowers and the tour pack, and we removed the speakers from the lids. We didn't need them. The bike was plenty loud. And this was better use of amplifier power in our opinion. He heard a couple of our bikes when he first came in. He said that was the sound he was looking for. He didn't need all this. We could honestly build this bike with 2 amplifiers. But since it was there, we kept them, we used them, and we just dialed the power back. He wasn't asking for too much. It's just the shop under-delivered and overcharged him. It's a shame. But he hung out here for a week with us in a local hotel. We got it right. We had lunch together every day. He got to listen to a bunch of bikes. And at the end of the day, we provided the output that we had promised him. He's completely happy. He's home now with the bike. He's got some recourse with this other shop. I don't know how this is going to work out. But check out the build, check out how we fixed it. We were able to make the client happy, and this is what we did. So if you follow basic math on current draw, you'll know that a 1,000 watt RMS amplifier draws about 70 amps of current, depending on the efficiency of amplifier. So being that this is a 2,000 watt amplifier, 70 plus 70 is 140 amps. So you see here, I've uploaded the spec sheet for the Cicada BDA 2000 watt amplifier, and it actually recommends 120 amp fuse. So 120 amp fuse for 2000 watts. They ran 2 of these amplifiers, so that would be 240 amps. So 240 amps cannot flow through an 8-gauge wire, cannot flow through a 4-gauge wire, so you would need 0 gauge from the battery and then split into 2 4-gauge. 4-gauge can flow 150 amps of current, no problem. So this is, as you could see, this is not my opinion. This is scientific fact. You cannot run two 2,000 watt amplifiers on one 8-gauge wire. You just simply can't do it. Carlos Ramirez, owner of NVS Audio in Roselle, New Jersey. CVO from Canada to New Jersey to have us do a wiring rescue on the bike. He had the audio done on the bike, use all top of the line equipment. The bike is complete Cicada build, but there was a couple of things he didn't like. They did not consult with him before they did it. He's not happy with the way the bike sounds, and he lost his power lock feature. He's really pissed off about that. So let's go over the bike and show you what's going on. So the first thing that they did that I wouldn't do is they removed the CVO radio and put a SoundStream radio in. So nothing wrong with the SoundStream radio, but on the CVO you lose a bunch of features. And once you flash the radio and use the DSP, it sounds exactly the same. This bike has a DSP. There's no need to change the radio, but fine, they changed the radio. So now, as you go in here, you'll notice that they have a 2000.4. So they did the game changer amp rack. They jumped power for the DSP off the terminals of the amplifier. So you see the red wire, thin wire going to the red wire, thick wire. Same with the black, to run it to the DSP all the way in the trunk. Instead of catching at the amplifier, they could have literally gone to the SoundStream harness, which gives you constant power, ground, but fine, I can live past that. They left everything bouncing around in the fairing. So they have the Cicada CMs in the fairing. I don't know why they chose to go with the CXs and the lowers instead of the CHs. CX in the tour pack, I definitely understand that because tour packs are thin, the tour pack pods. But these are his power lock motors that he's asked me to reinstall because he never gave them permission to remove his power locks. The issue is, this is one of the CVOs that comes with lids, without lid speakers and power locks. On those, you cannot do the adapter unless you remove the power locks. If he wants to retain his power locks, he's got to order the lids that come with factory speakers, do the adapter, 5x7 to 6x9. So now they ruin these lids. He has to buy a new set of lids if he wants to get his power lock feature back. Plus, this bike has too many speakers. So they did 8 mids versus 2 8-inch mid bass drivers. Of course, the bass is never going to keep up the highs because there's too many mids. There's one 2,000 running the bass, then they have 4,000 watts running the highs. So they have double the power to the highs that they do the bass. It's never going to work. Then they went and sealed off his bags. So that's fine. Whenever the customer wants maximum bass, we seal the bags. They sealed the bags and only did 8s. If you're going to lose all the bag space and you have a 2,000 watt amp to push them, do 10s. This doesn't make sense at all. So now he's not happy with the way the bike sounds, not happy with the bass, lost his power locks, and he rode all the way from Canada to have us make it right. So this is the before. Let's see if we can make it better. At least they were neat. The install's neat. But these amps require 4-gauge wire. And there they go again, jumping the power wire. They're using the amp as a distribution block. I hate it when people do that. That's why you see 2 remote wires in that hole, because they jump the remote from that amp to that amp. And then they're jumping power and ground wire and then running it across when the distribution block's right there. This distribution block gives you 1 wire in, 4 wires out. So you could have easily ran that wire to there. Now this is where the big mistake comes in. This is a 2,000 watt amplifier. Anything over 800 watts requires a 4-gauge wire. So that's 4,000 watts of amplifiers in the tour pack. They ran 1 8-gauge wire and then split it to 2 8-gauge wires. And then they wonder why the amps aren't doing any power. So where these amps will require a 4-gauge wire each, there's an 8-gauge wire split into 2. So that means each amp is getting 16 gauge. This is why the amps are not producing power. Simple, simple math, people. This amp requires 4-gauge and this amp requires 4-gauge. Then you do a 0-gauge into the block, then a 4-gauge to this amp and a 4-gauge to that amp. So no matter how pretty the install is, it's completely wrong and we have to redo it.
Big label over there.
Oh, it's a beautiful job. Everything's labeled. But it doesn't matter if you're not going to follow the laws of physics. It takes power to make power. I bet you it's probably a factory battery under the seat too. We'll check that next. They cut the bag all the way, so when you stand behind the bike, you can actually see the woofer. That looks terrible. So this is the fuse holder for the tour pack. This is the fuse holder for the fairing. As you can see, it's 8 gauge going to the fairing, which is bad enough because that amp needs 4 gauge, but this is even worse because it's 8 gauge going to the tour pack to 2 amplifiers that require 4 gauge. And then the funny part is this fuse holder comes with 4 gauge. So they took the 4 gauge wire off and stuck 8 gauge wire in there, and it gets even better. It gets even better. Kyle, what size fuse would you use for one 2,000 watt amp? Roundabout.
What size fuse? Like book 50?
150 for that one, 150 for that one, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not good at math, so those two together would be?
300.
300. Okay, let's see. So 100 wouldn't be right?
Oh, no.
So 100 amp fuse that hasn't blown, running 2,000 watt amplifiers on 8 gauge wire. Is this done correctly, Kyle?
No.
Not even close. See, this is the stuff I'm talking about. So they're running 80 amps. See that? 240s. So 40 is 80. For one 2,000, they ran an 80. For two 2,000s, they ran a 100. So 80 for one 2,000, 100 for two 2,000s. You can't make this stuff up. Okay, so we upgraded our power input to 0 gauge and then 4 gauge outputs. Same thing on the ground side. 0 gauge in, 4 gauge out. Each amp now has 4 gauge input. The bags are now sealed and ported. We upgraded to 10s, Cicada mid-bass 10s instead of 8s. And we removed the lid speakers. So when he gets home, he's going to put the factory lids back on, put his power locks back in. So we have the CMs up top, CHs in the bottom, CXs in the tour pack pods, nothing in the lids.
fresher than whole. Riddle me that. The rest of y'all know where I'm lyrically at. Can't none of y'all mirror me back. You didn't hear me rap, it's like Hand G rapping his prime. Young H.O., raps Grateful Dead. Back to take over the globe, now break bread. I'm in Boeing Jets, Global Express. Out the country, but the blueberries still connect. On the low, but the yacht.
When I was young, if I said to my mum I was going to go to a snooker hall, she'd probably clip me around the ears. Bad places, you know, misspent youth, all those type of phrases. But the reality is, it's just ordinary blokes.
You give me something I
Carlos Ramirez, owner of NVS Audio in Roselle, New Jersey. Hamilton took the trip all the way from Canada, rode the bike all the way from Canada to get the audio upgrade on his bike. Are you completely happy, and was it worth the trip?
I would have went 10 times further. Fantastic. Everything I wanted.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.